Hi, this is Aaliyah Mara, author of Parallel Mind, The Art of Creativity. All designers know that visual design is a balancing act. Typography, color, images, and content. We can play with all of those. A catalog site is a great example of potential information overload. The LL Bean site maximizes the use of design principles to make their site easy to browse and buy from. Let's talk about a few of these. Tool number one is proportion. The visual relationships of everything on this page is not only well balanced, but certain elements draw the user's attention due to their size, specifically the ad on the center of the page. In my book, Parallel Mind, The Art of Creativity, I talk about how the brain perceives larger items on a page as being in the foreground. We naturally think that what is in the foreground is more important than what is in the background. Artists have been using this tendency since time immemorial to draw attention to certain elements. Notice how the relative sizes of other items on the page put those items into the background and are progressively less important than the largest element. Tool number two is color. Check out how the color palette lends to easy, clean design, which is all about legibility and communication. Usually, one would use the red as an accent color, as it is in the ads in the lower parts of the page. Making the red so large runs the danger of shouting up to the user, but what saves this page is both the dull color of the red and the fact that this red is used elsewhere on the same page. That turns it into a background color. Tool number three is relationships. A principle I call chunking information is something that a good designer does in his sleep. It's a kind of visual editing, like taking related thoughts and putting them in the same paragraph, those paragraphs that relate to each other into the same chapter, and those into a book. One way to establish a relationship is to put items that belong together in proximity to each other. Another way to establish a relationship is to use visual cues, like color. I like to think of this as a kind of code the designer sets up from the beginning for the user. In this case, the dull green at the top is reserved for interface elements, with a darker green and blue for buttons. Red for headlines, accents. Although the site violates this rule with the ad, rule violations are okay as long as they're judicious. And as you dive deeper into the site, the rules come back, with dull red headlines and dark blue buttons. Another planet altogether is Wired Magazine's site. Since their inception, Wired has pushed the limits of good design to the limits of legibility. Not only does their magazine do that, but their current site does it as well. High contrast black text on a white background tends to make me feel anxious. Why? Well, that's because it puts everything in the foreground, shouting for my attention. In contrast, check out Propeller. They have used color, relationships, and proportion to their advantage. Shades of blue form a restful background, with the dark shade reserved for text links, and medium shades for interface elements. Stories alternate between boxes of off-white and pale blue. This helps chunk the related information. The red color is reserved for accents and buttons. Okay, if we were print designers, our job would be mostly done once we had finished laying out the page and getting our comps approved. But web designers have a few other things to consider. Come with me to examine how good site architecture can take users off the precipice of information overload.